Thank you. Can we stand for the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the roll.
Mr. Benton.
Here.
Mrs. Boer.
Here.
Mrs. Davis. Here. Mr. Swagger.
Here.
And Mrs. Thomas is absent.
And we'll go right into our presentation, Mr. Dixon.
Yes, board members, I'm delighted this evening to bring Marcy in to give you an update. As you know, we have new Ohio laws that's kind of dictating programs, literacy, namely functional literacy, that's coming our way. This is tied with the new dyslexic law as well. And I just want to begin with a note that the more we study what we have to do, the more I appreciate on our look backs on the data, how much the staff has done in the past. And I think you'll see that with some of this presentation that she's going to bring to you this evening. Our teachers and our principals have done a yeoman's job of promoting literacy in our school district. And the advances that our students have made in the way of student achievement are nothing but remarkable, even before this law. However, like so many times before in our profession, we get dictated sometimes through law, things that we have to do, and sometimes we don't have funding to do them. It's called unfunded mandates. This is not a bad law. It's just going to be challenging to implement and costly to implement. And so we wanted to give you a sense of where we are and where we're headed, because some decisions need to be made in the not too distant future relative to programming and commitment of dollars. So with that, I'll introduce Marcy to provide some information for you. Thanks, Marcy, for all your time preparing this. And if you would, please speak into the mic so everyone can hear at home and abroad.
Okay. I will do that. Well, thank you for allowing me to provide another update on our progress since our last presentation. Last time we went over the complexities of what it meant to learn how to read. We reviewed some of the requirements of the dyslexia law, and I shared a district timeline for the work to be done. So tonight I'll provide an update just on any new requirements or continuing requirements of Ohio's dyslexia law and the progress so far with the work that we've been doing to implement and as Mr. Dixon said, a core structured literacy program. So just to review briefly, there are 8 key points within the law that are pretty important. Some of them impact us and some of them impact others. The first one that the law required that ODE established an Ohio Dyslexic Committee, which is the ODC. So, you know, we like to talk in acronyms. So the ODE was required to establish an ODC, and they did that. And under the law, the ODC then was to develop and release a draft of a guidebook. We waited for that to come out while on our end did a lot of other work with literacy. That guidebook did come out in December, late. We were able to look at it in January, and we did have the opportunity to give feedback on the guidebook. We believe the final guidebook will be coming out in the spring from the State Department and the Ohio Dyslexia Committee. So the ODC was responsible under the law also to determine the number of clock hours for PD. And they were also responsible for a certification process or guidelines for a certification process. So we're going to talk a little bit tonight about the difference between PD and certification, because that's been pretty clarified since the last time that I spoke. They were also permitted, the ODC was permitted to provide ratios of the number of teachers to be certified, but permitted is a lot different than required. So we'll wait for the guidebook to see what the final is on that. Another requirement of the law was for the Department of Education to identify screening measures, because students will need to be screened under the requirements of this law. And then school districts, obviously, are required to administer the screenings as part of the law as soon as next school year. Okay. And again, the PD will be required for certain teachers, and it will be phased in over 3 years. And then finally, that 8th component is that by next year, districts have to establish a process for which they will certify teachers. So let's take a look a little bit at the difference between the PD requirement and the certification requirement. So all K through 3 teachers and K through 12 special education teachers will be required to have the PD. The PD is going to be 18 hours, and it has to be aligned with the guidebook, which again will come out this spring in the final form. It is a 3-year phased-in timeline with first and kindergarten teachers and intervention teachers in those grade levels to be complete with it by 23-24, followed by second and third grade teachers by 24-25, and finally by 25 through the 25-26 school year, all 4th through 12th grade intervention specialists. So we are hopeful that the ODC, when they release their final guidebook, will broaden the scope a little bit of who can provide that PD. Currently, it's very restricted. So, you can't really partner with another school district who has a literacy coordinator to have them come out and do that unless they're certified to do that PD. So it's very restricted right now, and we're hoping they're going to broaden the requirements a little bit of who can offer that. We do know that ODE will develop a free course that meets the PD requirements, and that is expected to be out late fall of 2022. It is kind of important to point out, too, at the local level that we have 3 PD days per school year, and we want to just recognize that those aren't quite enough to support the requirements of the law. That in itself is 18 hours, and it isn't the only PD that those teachers have. So, for example, a teacher that also provides gifted instruction is responsible and required to have anywhere from 6 to 15 hours of PD a year. So just kind of pointing that out because we might have to get creative, and just wanted to make that kind of a realistic point that it may require some additional time or dollars.
For K3.
Project at that point, you'll see I put out kind of a superintendent report to you this afternoon. Take some time to read through there because I allude to the PD that we're having on discussions with and the need possibly for another day for certain needs now and in the future. So we're still discussing that, but we'll clarify that more going over the next few weeks.
Because this PD is just for K3 and then the K12 intervention folks, right?
K3
Correct.
and K12 intervention. That is correct.
But these same K3 teachers, grades 2 and 3 anyways, also have the gifted requirements too. And so we can eat up all of our 3 days very quickly. So
I don't want to digress at this point from Marcy's presentation, but we also have Power School training to get in place. And I know that teachers are requesting some extra help as we matriculate from this spring into next fall with some of that training. So I'm working with the calendar committee and the PD committee later on this year to kind of work that out through these different requests. And so we'll probably be asking to replace a day with a PD day here in the spring, and certainly add another day in next year's calendar. That's currently what we're looking at, as well as possibly an early release on the last day of school this year for some other, that's helping to pack for the move to the JIS. So just when you read that in your brief, this is what we're alluding to.
Are you looking at phasing it all in? There's a phase in over a 3-year
Right.
period. Are we looking at doing it all at once, or are we going to do the minimum to the guideline?
Marcy, go ahead and address the timing in there.
it's a little backwards thinking to me, the way that the state is rolling it out just with the timeline, but I understand why, because they want to give time for districts to, get all of this in order. And the ODC has just, I know a couple of people on the committee, and they're working incredibly long hours and extra hours outside of their regular jobs to kind of, develop all of this. So I definitely understand why, but the backwards kind of thinking for me is, we're supposed to be screening next year. And if we're screening, we're going to talk about screening in a little bit, but if the point is to screen and intervene and monitor, well, then wouldn't we want to have the professional development ahead of that so we know what we're expecting and what we're looking to monitor? So to me, it would be best to have some of the professional development ahead of time, and with all teachers that are going to be providing the interventions for these students and instruction for these students, and also being in charge of the screeners.
Do any of our intervention specialists, either K-12, do any of them have any training in this particular, we don't know exactly what it encompasses,
Mhm.
but how much training do they have in this particular area to identify, even though it's not right now coinciding with the state guidelines, because those are still to be determined?
Right. So we've had as a K-5 some pretty intensive literacy training over the last 5 years, actually from somebody that's on the dyslexia committee now. At the time, it wasn't even there, but we've had some pretty intense literacy training, but not to the level of the requirements of this law.
Did you give any kind of certification? And
No.
no,
No.
they just did it, but
They,
There's no way to
teachers
declare that
received
they did do
hours,
it.
but a certification, it wouldn't have been any kind of endorsement, just training, knowledge.
okay.
Mhm.
Do you know the training that you said ODE is coming out with
Mhm.
next spring?
Late fall,
Late fall.
2022.
Is that in-person training or is it online or how?
I haven't heard that
Okay.
yet. My guess is it'll be probably modules.
Okay.
I've seen the syllabus for it. Looks module-y to me. Module-like to me.
Module-like.
So let's talk a little bit about certification, because that is different. Though certification and PD are two different requirements under the law. So while those PD hours are 18 hours for all K through 3 and K-12 intervention specialists, districts will locally determine which teachers will become certified. So certification programs range from 90 to 110 clock hours. It's very extensive training. You usually have to complete a practicum as well. Okay, so what this becomes is something like a Wilson certified trainer, a dyslexia practitioner, or a Orton Gillingham practitioner. So you get that different kind of certification, kind of like what you were saying, Ruth Ann. Then you have something in hand that says, I am certified for this. So that's pretty intensive. So as you can see, anywhere from 90 to 110 clock hours.
And I know, again, like you said, a lot of this is still coming out. Is there any sort of, we're expecting one person in the building to be certified, one
Mhm.
person K2, 3, is there any sort of a general number as to how,
Yeah.
anticipating how many
Sure.
people are going to have to do it?
Under the requirements of the law, ODE said that the ODC might or could establish ratios, but they haven't, and I don't think they will. They may, but I don't think they will, based on what I've heard and reading the minutes of those meetings.
I would say early on with the state committee, there was discussion from that end of requiring one fully certified licensed person per 100 students. There was pushback on that as being quite elaborate, especially for districts that have a good literacy program in place already, and what that might take from the other programs within the buildings. And so they're still discussing how they're going to end up on that ratio, but I don't think anything close to 1 per 100 students. That would mean 17 fully licensed people within our district today. And that just seemed a bit of an overreach. While I know companies want to sell their training, we need to take the holistic look at this and see what's practical, given the fact that of the students' targets population that we're going to be dealing with on especially the dyslexic side.
Sure. And, the certification could end up being for us, as Mr. Dixon said, if it is 1 to 100, about 16 to 18 teachers. Probably most definitely, this will be a local decision, how many we certify and how we certify. Unless those ratios come out, that's going to be a local decision. But we will have some recommendations that at least the teachers that are supporting those students, which could be your Title I reading specialists and possibly your intervention specialists too. Okay, so we will kind of wait for that. They have released some recognized pathways. There'll be some more information coming from the guidebook, but those pathways include higher ed programs and then independent programs such as Orton Gillingham, Wilson Reading, MSLIC training, which is another really highly recognized training as well. So we're kind of looking at that. We've gotten costs on that. We believe depending on which program we go with, it'll be anywhere from $2,300 to $3,600 per person that we certify.
So you guys will make the decision on what.
The process we will probably establish some sort of what the district's going to cover. Obviously, we can't compensate all of those hours, 110 hours. Some of it will be on their own time. That's with any higher education that typically is. But the practicum, is usually 1-to-1 meeting with one student 2 to 3 times a week for 45 minutes. Certainly we could bring students in and do that during the instructional time.
And I guess also like what method, if we're on Orton Gillum, or choosing that, will
So-
you make, who makes that decision, and do we go with
It'll
the
be
same
a
for
local
everyone?
decision, but as we prepare to create that local process, I really believe that we should look at certifying teachers in different programs.
Okay.
This will allow for varied certification process for our district, and we'll be able to meet a wider range of students' needs. So we can have some teachers do one of those processes and some teachers do another, and then we really have that wide range there.
Thank you.
Mhm. So any questions anymore about PD or certification?
Is there any way we can get a jump start on that certification, say, this summer?
We
Could
could.
teachers?
We could.
It seems like we would have.
Mhm.
You have the investment in the teachers. I
Mhm.
understand that, but we also have an investment of time and away from the classroom that
Mhm.
and processes that you already have in place. Aren't we? Isn't it a wiser choice for us to try to encourage or assign, if we can, what can happen this summer?
We certainly can look at that. As I said, we're going to look at a couple of different certification processes. The list is pretty defined. I mean, it's very defined right now.
Right.
And there are 2 or 3 that I think would be great for us to go with and partner with. And our goal is to kind of maybe have that ready to roll, because that process does have to be established by the beginning of next school year. So having it ready, sooner than that. And if there are teachers that want to, volunteer to do the online part or the in-person part over the summer, then we could probably offer that.
Have you checked with other school districts to see how they're going to handle theirs? And I assume
Yes.
you have, knowing you have, but
Yes, I have.
do you have some thoughts
Sure.
for us there?
A couple of the districts that I've met with are doing a combination. They're already a Wilson Reading School, and so they're going to add some more folks to their Wilson Reading. They're going to add an Orton Gillingham certified person. Excuse me. Another school district that I've met with has a literacy coordinator who is MSLIC certified, so she is actually training her teachers up to 30 in the district, because she is a literacy coordinator hired by the district who is certified. So that's another route that we could always go to, is hire a literacy coordinator who is certified, and they could train and track all of these hours, but that's a whole nother conversation.
As we're hiring now, would it not be something we'd look for in the person we're adding to your building, the assistant or whatever we're going to call that person? That we look for a person who has some of these skills that they bring, and
You could, but then you're kind of splitting their job into a literacy coordinator. Starting out, they're no longer really a literacy coordinator's target is really to coach teachers, keep track of all of these hours, do a lot of the work for the screener, track the data. It would be probably a job that would be pretty cumbersome to also be a dean of students alongside literacy.
do we have
coordinator.
any paras that could help that to become a? I guess I'm looking at the knowledge that the person we're bringing on will be gaining by understanding this program from the beginning, and then
Mhm.
growing with the program. I understand the details. I don't really understand them because I don't know what they've told us we have to do yet. But
You mean
Um,
the dean
yes, that
being the one
maybe
to
that
certify?
that dean needs another. Maybe we reassign a paraprofessional for some of the book work and the tracking and the hours. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there.
Mhm.
It might be something we look for in the candidate. What kind of training do they have? Maybe it's not even possible to find one. Don't
Yeah.
know. I just throw that out.
Sure. I understand that. Okay, So we're going to move on to screening. So when we talk about screening, by the start of next school year, we're required to screen students. However, at the present time, there are no assessments approved to fulfill the requirements of the law. The expected release date for the vendor-approved assessments is April of 2022. So we're really awaiting that. According to the information that's posted out on ODE, dyslexia will not be added as a disability category for special education. So these screeners are designed to help recognize students at risk for dyslexia, not to diagnose. So we will be giving a tier 1 dyslexia screener, as the state calls it. So we want to be careful not to get this mixed up with our RTI program. We often call that tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. A tier 1 level screener will be given to help students recognize students who are at risk. After the screener is given, if a student is at risk, based on whatever scores and the assessment we give and the protocols for that, we'll notify the parent or guardian and we'll monitor their progress for 6 weeks. And then if no progress is observed, districts will administer a tier 2 level screener to determine if the student has dyslexic tendencies. And then again, we'll notify parents within 30 days of that second administration and provide parents then with our information about our multi-sensory structured literacy program. So again, we need to make some determinations fairly quickly. Once the list comes out, we do have a focus group that's ready to go. As soon as the list comes out, they're actually kind of already going to take a look at a couple of the screeners or assessments that are out there that we think might be on the list and start comparing those. So we do have some great teachers doing some great work on this to be ready when it does come out.
And once again, Marcy, just to make another point about our past, it's not that we have never screened.
Oh, no.
We have always looked for dyslexia.
Mhm.
We're not about the business of diagnosing. We're about looking for red flags, so to
Mhm.
speak. And so they've done a yeoman's job for many years of trying to identify the red flags for dyslexia and intervene. So this is nothing new to our district. It's just it's being formalized as far as to the process.
Yeah. So we already universally screen students in reading and math and kind of break those scores down. The assessments that we think will end up on the approved list, we don't really think will be much different than some of the assessments we're currently using. It's just the way that we interpret them and use them might be a little bit different.
Can you real quick go over the timeline of when do we do the screening? When would the second screening occur? And then
Yeah.
the 30 days? Oh, am I ahead?
Nice segue. Well, as far as when we start
All right.
next year.
All
Okay.
right. Yep. Thanks.
So the timeline is, and we can expect a higher cost in the first year because we're going to screen more students in the first year. So next year, all kindergarten students through third grade have to be screened. However, kindergarten students are not screened until after the first day of January. And so that's a little bit of clarity in the law since it's come out. So in our startup year, all kindergarten students and then elementary grade startup would be students in grades 1 through 3 in addition to those kindergartners, and grades 4 through 6 by request. Okay.
Do we have a
that can be-
timeline on like 1 through 3? You said we started at the beginning. Do we have a
Mhm.
timeline we have to have them all
That
screened
has
by?
not come out yet. I
Okay.
expect that'll come out in the beginning. I have the first release of the guidebook recommended a less than 10-minute screener.
Okay.
Okay. But, we're just kind of waiting to see.
And Tim, I've just asked Chris, she's going to make some copies for you
Oh.
of timelines, and that'll make it clear.
Okay.
It's ones we've had out previously, but I want to make sure you get it
That's
answered
what I
to
was
your
asking.
question.
What we do now versus what they're proposing. Is there much of a difference?
I think not so much of a difference. If our current screener ends up on the list, then we'll use that.
Okay.
At least for the level 1 screener, the tier 1 screener. And then we might just have to go a little deeper with the tier 2 screener, but we'll kind of have to wait and see.
Okay. Thank you.
And then in the second year, we just, from that point forward, will screen all kindergarten students. So moving forward, it'll be a little less universal screening at the onset, and then we'll screen students in grades 1 through 6 upon parent request or teacher request, and follow that same protocol. and then transfer students as well, because if a student transfers into the district, they have to be screened within 30 days of transfer in.
At any grade level?
At any grade level, grades K through 6.
Okay.
So transfer students are a little bit of a different component with your 4th through 6th graders, because they will have to be screened. All transfer students, grades K through 6, have to be screened. If it's a kindergartner and we haven't given it yet, then they can wait and do it within their window. If it's grades 1 through 6, we have 30 days to screen them after they enroll. It's very similar to 3rd grade guarantee screening. It's the same for that. We have 30 days to screen for that as well. Any other questions about screening? All right. We're going to move on then to some of the work that has been done. You guys were asking about that. Mr. Dixon kind of alluded to that. While we certainly do want to uphold the law and the requirements of the dyslexia law, I can assure you that literacy work has been done and is currently being done that goes really beyond the requirements of the law, and it really has an impact on all students. Our work has been intentional, it's been purposeful, and it's been really data-driven. Our teachers understand that comprehension is the end goal for reading, and they know from their work that we've been trained in the simple view of reading that comprehension is the product of language comprehension and those decoding ability. Last time I presented, I showed you that Scarborough's reading rope, where it kind of brought those ideas together. So they have received training. The training they received was in literacy, and it was in the 5 essential components we see here. Those are the components of reading. They've learned to use data. They already were, but they've learned how to use it, and we've used decision trees to really target where the deficits are coming from, if there are deficits, and where to extend if they're already on grade level in each of these 5 areas. But we also use data to determine the effectiveness of our core programs and our intervention programs. So just to clarify, a core program is instruction that all students receive, while intervention offers support to students in addition to the core. So 5 years ago, we implemented a core phonological awareness program at grades K through 1, because phonological awareness is really the basis and is crucial for reading and spelling success in the future. Now, we need to note that phonological awareness, it has nothing to do with print. It's not phonics, okay? It has nothing to do with print. It is the ability for students to hear the sounds in words and hear the sounds in spoken words, not in text. As I said, it's really crucial to later success with reading and spelling. So we decided through the work that we did 5 years ago that we wanted to implement a core phonological awareness program at grades K through 1 and set a goal that based on our data, we felt that within 2 years of implementation that we could have 100% of group students on grade level by 2nd grade for phonological awareness, which is an early developing skill, and they should be 100% tested out of phonological awareness by the time they're in 2nd or 3rd grade. So we can take a look at the data that we have, trend data with that. As you can see, you can follow one cohort of students. We implemented the program, and there's a larger picture of this on your back page, in 2017. And our students were coming in at kindergarten with 40% on grade level for phonological awareness. And through implementing that core program, by the end of the year, 94% were. And you can follow that light blue group all the way as they went to 1st grade, 2nd grade, until we closed in spring of 2020. So you can kind of see the implementation of what a daily phonological awareness instruction did over a 2-year time period. And we were really on track to meet our goal of 100% of students having mastery by grade 2. But then, as I said, things kind of changed drastically for us, not just for us, but in the entire world. Phonological awareness was one area that was greatly impacted by the pandemic. If you think about it, I said it's spoken words, hearing spoken words. Well, if you're wearing a face covering, you don't really get to hear very many spoken words very well. They're kind of muffled. Social distancing, remote learning. Imagine trying to hear spoken words and hearing sounds and spoken words over Zoom when we're often like, what? Who's talking right now? So it really did have an incredible impact. But we know what to do. We still have this program in place. We use it daily, and we believe we're going to get back on track with this. Okay,
That data is impressive, I might add.
thank you.
It's really good.
We've really, the teachers have really embraced the program. It's called Haggerty Phonological Awareness. Students participate in it daily as it's a core program. And then students that are having deficits with it will get it in a small group and get that second dose. So then we can look at our phonics. That's kind of the next precursor of spelling and reading success. And we can look at our phonics trend data, which shows a little bit of a different picture. As you saw back on the phonological awareness, students are actually coming in at a little higher percentage of on grade level than they are for phonics. Our trend data shows that more than 50% of students entering grades K through 2 in the fall benchmark assessment were below level in phonics. And then you can look at those spring percentages, and we do see a tremendous amount of growth, but not quite as many students on grade level as we would like for that. And so we did some thinking, and we did a lot of diving into our data, and I can just say we have an amazing group of teachers. They implemented a focus group, and they decided that they wanted to really take a look at this data and see what was going on. The focus group's been working for about a year and a half now, and they've been analyzing the data. They've researched some structured literacy core programs and some professional development opportunities. And they've made some recommendations that I'm going to share with you as well. And again, with the phonics, I would say this is one of the greatest impacted areas from the pandemic. I would say this is where a lot of the lost learning has come from. You can see it in this data on KN1 because they struggled to learn remotely. Our younger students did struggle to learn remotely, and it really did impact their phonics. And we definitely see it as we move, when we go back to that progression, it's impacting their later developing reading skills, such as comprehension.
Marcy, was there a direct correlation, pardon me for asking you this cold because we haven't discussed it before, but was there a correlation between those who were online, say the 26% in the fall, to these results?
I have not looked at that. I would have to go back and dive into that and take a look.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see if there is a correlation between those who were fully online versus those who were in the classroom.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And just to point out, the reason we don't have spring 1920 data is just because we didn't take the assessment remotely. Everybody was shut down during that time. So the focus group and as K3 staff believe that having a core program like we did with phonological awareness will not only help students with dyslexic tendencies, but will also be effective for all students. So a core structured literacy program will prepare students to decode words in a very explicit and systematic manner. And a core structured literacy program will provide a common language for students, that common for phonics, common for handwriting instruction, and common for spelling. The focus group really narrowed their search, and we are in the final stages of gathering input from all K through 3 teachers on one of 2 programs. The programs we've narrowed it down to are Foundations by Wilson Reading and 95 Core by 95% Group. So again, a core program is really an essential piece toward the work that's been done over the last 5 years, and also looking at the data that we have collected. And we believe that it's going to show some pretty significant impacts within 2 to 3 years. So let's talk money.
Save that to last, almost.
Yes. So these are really just estimates. I have met with vendors, okay, of the 2 that we talked about, met with them extensively, gotten some quotes for product training as well as materials. These are rough quotes based on the numbers for next school year. A core program for grades K through 3 with materials, product training, these are high. On the high end, it's going to be up to $100,000. And then there will be some consumable materials to replace each year. That'll run about $18 per student or $11,000. There may be additional costs for PD. If we decide to do the free ODE course, then of course the cost would be if we're going to pay subs to, cover classrooms or what, but that can really cause a hardship for the whole district to do it that way. But there may be some costs. But we are really hopeful that that scope of that PD of who can train will be broadened. If we go with the company and our trainer for product implementation is also certified, then we can count that in the hours. And that really is the desire of the focus group. And it's a really strong desire. And I wholeheartedly agree. If you're going to be trained in their products and use them for the purpose they are, they're going to be also training you about what is structured literacy and how these products can best benefit students. So I believe that if that gets broadened, we'll be in really good shape.
I had one question. When we were looking at the data, when we looked at phonics data, Tim and I were just looking at it.
Mhm.
The thing here is when you leave, like if you leave kindergarten, right,
Yep.
you're at 80%, right?
Yes.
And then you come back in the spring and you're at 30%.
Yes.
Okay. Is there something we can do? Because I'm sure that it's a thing where, you're not practicing it at home.
Yes.
You're off for the summer and you're coming back each year and you're
Mhm.
efficient, right?
Yes.
So is there something we can do to help?
So
in that
I
regard?
want to point out something. We've had this discussion a million times over. We call it the great boomerang effect,
Yeah, 'cause
right?
that's
So
what
they're
we were just
boomeranging
talking
back. Yeah. And one thing that data you look at and it can look very easily like, wow, we had students all the way to 89% in kindergarten and then they came back in the fall and they were only at 29%. It looks like they dropped drastically. What we have to remember, it's a different assessment. So
Right.
they were being tested on kindergarten skills, and then the next year they're being tested on first grade skills.
Yes.
So it's a completely different assessment.
But I'm going just in the kindergarten level. We've got them coming in at 23, 18, 20, 32, 31, which actually surprised me because those are the kids coming off that
Mhm.
probably didn't have as
Preschool.
much preschool,
Mhm.
or which I actually scored higher somehow.
Mhm.
But I didn't know. Is there outreach that we can do, or I know we do, but is there anything improved that we can do to the?
Well, we used to offer a summer reading program, and that was like 2 weeks before the start of the school year. It was more of a jump start. It wasn't anything really intensive. I mean, the work that was being done was good work, and we would it would be by invite. And we would kind of, invite students that might be in that percentage to kind of boomerang back down. But we haven't been able to staff a summer reading program for a couple of years.
Then how does our data compare to other districts on that? Do you know? Like how does that
I don't
kind of
know,
focusing on how the kindergartners
but
come
Debbie
in?
Seibel
Right.
knows from working with iReady.
Yeah.
Remember, you
She
said
knows.
invited.
I know, Tim, last year when we called iReady, I think it was in the spring, just to ask that question. How do we compare to other schools in Ohio? And how do we compare even nationally? And I don't have the exact figures, but they said whatever you are doing, keep doing it. You have some of the best data that we've seen. And particularly, we were talking about effects of the pandemic and where do we stack up. But we don't have access to pull that, but we can make another call
Okay.
and find out what does that still hold true? What's that look like?
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yep.
Do we currently consult with, say, some of the, I'll just say the Presbyterian Church that has the preschool and other preschools around Johnstown? Do we work with them to show them what you want and what we're lacking? Have you shown them this data?
I have not shown them this data. We get about 30% of our students from Johnstown Christian Preschool. Much fewer than that from Flying Colors, and those are the two main partnerships that we have right now. I do ask at kindergarten screening what preschool students came from, and last year we had over 38 different preschools on that list, so most of them not in this area.
Would we be effective to have a a gathering of all those that you've identified as preschools that are children, kindergartners are coming in, participating in, and actually do a one-day seminar on what you expect, what you'd like to see, what we're deficient in, what
We could
isn't.
do that. I know that Flying Colors uses Haggerty. I'm fairly certain, I'm going to have to ask Ashley, but I'm fairly certain that maybe Johnstown Christian Preschool has implemented that as well, which is our Haggerty Phonological Awareness program. And I think that maybe they might be using those programs as well, which may be why you're seeing. I'm actually going to try to find out from Ashley when they might have started that.
I was curious if they
because
started
that
something
might be
that's
where that jump is.
bumping us up.
And
And then
maybe, go ahead.
I was just going to ask it, or on the other side of that, have we identified one that's a preschool that's definitely not meeting our expectations, or if we're seeing a higher number of kids
We have
at any
not.
of them?
Actually, we take a look at it's actually the students. This is a tough one because we do partner with those two preschools quite a bit. And when I say partner, we meet with them, the students that are transitioning in from Flying Colors. Mr. Williams and I meet with them along with the intervention specialists, and we sit in on those IEPs and ETR meetings. So we do partner with them quite a bit. They're doing an yeoman's job because those are our students that are coming in ready for kindergarten. It's the students that don't have preschool that we see kind of the deficit with sometimes. But it's just a really hard thing to predict because you can have a student that never went to preschool, and as soon as they're in a structured kindergarten classroom all day, every day, they just take off. It's a really neat thing to watch. It's a really hard thing to track as far as what before they came to school helped set them up for success.
It's very difficult, Tim, to get data on preschool age children. It's been a challenge for us. I remember one year Janet dove into this issue for me relative to trying to find, hey, who among our students, who among those living in Johnstown are going to what preschool? You can't find it. So we do, on the registration gateway, we do sibling checks to try to get ahead of some of that and reach out to siblings with programs. Janet's looked into different grant programs for preschools, but it's very, very challenging to find data on those living within our district preschool age.
I guess it sounds like almost 50% of our kids are coming from those two you're dealing with, though. 40 some.
Probably more like 40.
40.
Yeah, but,
Okay.
Yeah,
But that's a large chunk of
that.
what we're.
very few.
And thank you, Mr. Busenberg. He has to go to soccer, so I get to leave today.
Any other questions on that data? Definitely hear what you're saying. Those are the very conversations that we have often about that. Like I said, we kind of call it the boomerang effect. They come back and they're back down to that, but we have to really look at it as it's much harder skills each time they take that assessment in the fall.
I know you said you were looking at foundations
Mhm.
and the other one. For the cost, are they essentially equivalent?
So they're fairly close. Foundations is going to be a little bit more because Foundations is by Wilson Reading. And now I'm going to switch to tiers RTI. Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. Tier 1 is that core program. Tier 2 is intervention. And Tier 3 is reading specialists and more intensive intervention, but not special education students. Okay. So Wilson has a Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 program. So the Tier 3 is Wilson Reading, and it's a certification program. So it's going to be a little bit more expensive because, as we heard, it costs more to certify.
Mm-hmm.
Where a 95% group doesn't have a certification program. They do have a Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 program, but it's not a certification. And so when I've laid out the cost of the $100,000, I tried to compare apples to apples here, that is the same, we would get the same thing, just materials and product training for that $100,000. So the range was anywhere from $77,000 for one and $90,000 for the other. The $100,000 put it up with Foundations has a resource called Geodes, which is decodable books, but rich content decodable books. So you know what a decodable book is? kind of boring sometimes. See the cat, see the rat, those very decodable, predictable words. That really wasn't a good example either because C is not decodable so much, but rich text format, so the good vocabulary. So Geodes is a supplemental resource offered by foundations that I think if we go with that, we cannot go wrong because it's more in line with being able to teach students comprehension skills while teaching them those decoding skills. Okay, so that's why that's a little higher and I estimated on the high end in case we did go with that program. We talked about the replacement costs, some of those consumable materials, professional development, that will really be determined. Like I said, if we can use the product training as the PD and it counts as the 18 hours, then we won't have additional PD dollars. Certification, if we did decide to certify, let's say 20 teachers, it would be $72,000. That may be something we want to, cut in half and then add more as time goes on. And then the screener, I only took a look at the two that I'm kind of familiar with that I think are going to end up on the list, and they're $1.50 per student plus $129 per teacher for training. So that would be about $6,000. If we already are familiar with the screener when we decide on one, or if it's one we're already using, then we wouldn't have to do the training. So that's the cost. And then our next steps. So we are kind of in the final selection of selecting between those two core structured literacy programs, getting final costs, possibly with a recommendation in March or April for you. That's not up to me though, but that's up to Mr. Dixon, I guess. But we may be ready on the teachers focus group end and that input to have that recommendation by March. Then we would need to get the products ordered and schedule product training. I would recommend that we don't do any product training until the fall of next year in case we do have staffing changes that take place. Then everybody gets the same training and we're not trying to train new teachers coming in. We'll need to determine a PD schedule for those 18 hours. Our focus group, a second focus group to research those screeners is already going to take place, but they're really going to hop on that once that list comes out, make a selection, and then we'll have to schedule training for the screening measure. We do need to establish a certification process. So we will be working on that, probably more at the administrative level since it does impact the other principals as well. And then we need to determine which teachers to certify. And then finally, we need to develop that parent notification system, decide how we're going to progress monitor between the tier 1 and tier 2 screener, and then how we're going to track that progress. So those are, it looks like a lot and it sounds like a lot, but the list was about 20 bullets long last year at this time. So we've made a lot of progress, and I just can't thank the work of the teachers enough that have been really working with me on this. Any other questions?
I'd just like to say a big thanks to Marcy and the teachers, the entire staff that's been working on this for quite some time now to get ahead of this law. And with all of this, I think it's a great example, first of all, of the professionalism going on behind the scenes. It's hard to communicate all that these people do day in and day out in many different areas. This is but one. This is a literacy area. And so it's hard to communicate to the public all that goes on day in and day out with these professionals, but I'm proud of them. And also keep in mind, as we look at this one program, there's much in the way of professional development that we're required to offer. And so our staff tends to get spread thin with all the requirements, and we only have so much time with them, or we have to look at extra time with them. So these are the challenges, but time and time again, since the 30s, public education has stepped up, and the staffs have always stepped up and said, we're going to get it done. I don't know where that threshold is, where we can't fit any more in. I feel like we get close at times, but it's because of people like Marcy and the teachers and the entire staff that step up and get this done. So thank you, Marcy. And board, as you ask questions going forward, this is what goes in before you ever hear from me, a recommendation of what to do. And so we'll be formulating this and bringing it to you as early as the March meeting, certainly by the April meeting, as we hone down working with our staff in an inclusive manner to come at that recommendation for you. So thanks, Marcy.
Thank you.
With that, move on to our next with topic of discussion for field trips on the agenda.
Yeah, I've had a request from, I believe, Amanda
And Tim.
and
Yes.
Tim to discuss field trips in general, and happy to address that issue with you.
Yeah, and I don't know if you want to start. We just get a lot of requests from parents, and they feel like field trips used to occur a lot more often, don't, or that we don't take the field trips that we used to take, and we get questions as to. I know I got questioned as to why the board doesn't approve field trips, and I told them I don't know that I've turned any down. So that's
And-
kind of the discussion was, are we? I have no clue what's getting asked and what's being done and what used to be done that we're not doing. I'm not aware of any that I'm turning down as a board member, but I also don't know what isn't getting to me.
The board just says
Right.
no.
I
That's
think
what I
it's-
hear. The board just says no.
I think there's a rumor out there that's not legitimate. I just
No,
don't
I will
know.
tell
They-
you concretely, I can't remember of any field trips in my time here, which goes back 8 years. I can't remember us turning down field trips. While we certainly can't interrupt instruction a lot, I'm just not aware, and I'll just yield to the principals if they've heard any. This came up in the fall. I think it's a question. We researched it, and there haven't been any. Sometimes I hear about, well, we used to go to the zoo years ago.
So
with a group
I'll
or-
clarify the fall thing. I just
Yeah.
think in the fall, because some of the things we did last year, right? And so I brought it up in the fall just because some parents and teachers weren't sure if some of the things we would have done in the past, like Cornell School, were happening. And so I brought it up. But Tim and I have also talked about it. I think the students are very happy with what we currently provide, because he said, "Oh, are you trying to get rid of Cornell School?" I said, "Oh, no. It's the students love it. The teachers love it. I think we're happy with what we currently have and aren't looking to get rid of anything currently on our schedules. But I think as we're moving forward, I think this would be a great opportunity to start looking at how we can enhance learning outside of the classroom with field trips. I don't know. And so Tim and I talked about it, and no, sorry, bowling is not a field trip, right? So we're looking for ways to really, ideally enhance sort of STEM learning. And so we think it would be nice if, teachers, administrators could come up with lists, especially in the elementary, something to add to each grade level. And again, how we can make it cross curricular, integrating the writing. Obviously, you would obviously do all that. So we're just putting the caveat that, bowling is not a field trip, but we're really looking for stuff to really enhance that science, technology, mathematics. And I don't know how I don't want to be disrespectful by saying this, but I was a little surprised in third grade that there was a virtual farm tour given where we live. That's all. Not that it was. We do a virtual farm tour, which is great, but I think given where we live, we could have an in-person farm tour.
Away, if you noticed
No,
out there on
I
Beach
know.
Road, they're going
I'm
away.
just saying in the past. So, just things like that where, obviously utilizing our community as much as possible to enhance learning. And then, I think between COSI and the works, there's so many wonderful things out there. I know obviously interrupting instructional time is a concern for everybody, but I think, adding one day is not going to.
Yeah,
Not
and
gonna
those,
be
and
made
Amanda,
us
those
right.
points are very well taken. And as we've conversed, innovation is something that we've laid a good foundation for. I believe in this district. I believe our future holds bright opportunities for innovation, firsthand experiences for our children. Already entering into many of those discussions. Meeting next week with some staff. Relative to some of that visioning. Different business partners have reached out. I have no doubt in my mind that the opportunities for enhanced partnerships and experiences for K through 12 students on the horizon are very exciting. And so I'm right there with you on the STEM experiences for our boys and girls. And there are more of those, I think, that will be coming forth. And the program now heading into its finishing up its second year, K through 12, that foundation's laid. And so now it's time to take some of those skills out and see how they're applied in the workplace. And some of these new companies coming in, I know a lot of talk about the one big company, Intel, but there's many others out there. Amogen is one I had conversations with today. They're a biomedical pharmaceutical group. Well, guess what? We're ahead of the game on biomedical studies in our K through 12 students. We're starting to lay that foundation. There will be opportunities with Amgen to get our students involved. And as we get up higher level, we get into the high school, we hope to lay those base skills in place where these students can get out of the building and get to these places and have internships and potential for help with college in exchange for work coming back with these companies. The future is bright for those kind of opportunities. You are spot on in asking about those questions. So thanks.
And I want to clarify, we don't, obviously we extend the invitation for field trips to all of our students and all of the grades, but definitely I think it is good that we're all putting out there that I also have, as a board member, has heard the board has never approved field trips. So I don't know.
Did you say yes?
I said I maybe, I don't know, but that is sort of the mindset of the community that
I
they
don't
haven't
think so.
happened.
I'm
And
sorry,
I
don't
know
think
that in
so.
the past, the cost of busing for some of those is probably a huge deterrent and a massive consideration for field trips. So we are very aware of that. But we're open. We want to hear your proposals.
I was going to say that there was a moratorium.
About 2008,
There was this
when the financial crisis hit, there was
exactly,
curtailment.
serious financial
is correct.
crisis. It wasn't. That's Amanda. Talk to her.
Well,
Just
We've got a lot of local resources
do.
too now.
Oh,
that we didn't
and we've
used
got
to
more
have.
opportunity than we've ever had. We just
So-
have to organize it and not do a lot of asks out here so everybody's going every which way. But I know the board members who, I wasn't one of them, but I know they had to do what they had to do. So I'm sorry that's still out there that somebody says the board won't. The board hasn't denied anything. That's been a balance with our teachers and education. So I don't think this board has denied anything, nor the board previously. But it did way back. You're right. They didn't have the money
Yeah. I can't remember one conversation with a parent
that they've said.
questioning that we not going on a particular field trip or not.
I
I just,
haven't either, Dale.
with COVID, we certainly curtailed some. Yeah.
sure. Yay.
As long as they're tied to educational. I mean, I want to be clear.
And we'll
on that.
expect a book report on it.
And we know you want it, but for the community to hear.
Yes.
If you want to take them in the summer, have at it.
Right.
And I think, PTO has been really great about having COSI on wheels. And I haven't spoke to them recently, but in the past, when we've talked about field trips, they have said we will certainly see what we can do to support you guys. I know obviously their opportunity for fundraising has been considerably different the past 2 years, but we also definitely have that as a resource.
And let's not forget that gem that we have over in Newark called STEMworks. It is an amazing place with amazing opportunities for learning. If you haven't been there, I encourage you to stop by and see what they have. It's yes, right. And I know we've even had some STEM after school opportunities at our secondary level at times. So, but if you haven't been there,
It works
great resource locally.
for sure.
Didn't the zoo come here one year? Some animals from the zoo. I seem to remember that. And- Not your favorite, Marcy?
The snakes, not the snakes. It was this. It's always the snakes.
And I do know Opera Columbus has a great program for children, and I'd love to see that come and have it at the PAC, so a lot of kids could enjoy it instead of just a busload. So
And Tim and I were thinking that mentioning this is sort of timely as you guys have spring and are preparing for next year. Teachers are thinking about, this would be a great time to start sort of coming together and seeing what we can do for next year.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mhm.
Do we have any topics for executive session at all?
The binder?
Yep. At this time, take a motion to go into executive session for discussing personnel.
And no action afterwards.
Correct.
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
And what we got? 6:08.
Who would that include, Tim? Who would you like?
Just the four.
And-
Just the
board?
four.
Debbie
Oh, and Deb
Simon.
Seibel.
Working on it too.
Okay.
So I can dismiss the rest of the folks.
Yes.
Okay.
I think I got 6:08. Does that look good? 6:08. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Benton,
Yes.
Mrs. Boer,
Here.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Swagger.
Yes.
If you
All
would
right.
let us know what time you come out and
Yep.
who motioned and seconded the